After Colony 175, 5 of the most brilliant Oz scientists alive created the Oz WMS Tallgeese, a brand new type of weapon that would change history forever. And only a few years later, they would do it again with the Wing Gundam Zero, a machine that was so frighteningly powerful that they believed no human alive could handle it. So instead of building it, they decided to defect Oz, split up, and build their own simplified version of the Wing Zero based on their own area of expertise, which they would then use in a rebellion against Oz and the Alliance in their entirety. And one of these scientists was Master O, a specialist in mobile suit drive systems, or in other words, how to make mobile suits move. With this knowledge, he was able to make his Gundam into the most agile machine of all 5 original Gundams, and it was even able to replicate Chinese martial arts, which was part of his other specialty. He was a master of the martial arts, and the machine's future pilot, Chang Wu-fei, was also skilled in hand-to-hand combat, despite initially preferring his books over brawling. But so, Master O began working his Gundam in the A0206 colony of the L5 cluster, and because he could, he also made another Tallgeese, as one does when they have too much free time on their hands. Personally, I just use NordVPN to get access to more content on Netflix, and it also helps me to dodge those pesky regional locks, as well as giving me some extra security while browsing online. And if you don't have Nord yet, by using the code kkrt or the link down below, you'll not just get a sweet discount, but you'll also be supporting the channel. After Colony 194, Master O wasn't the only resident of A0206 who was harboring some rebellious intentions against the Alliance, but unfortunately, the Alliance caught on to this. Under the guise of decommissioning the colony, they planned to wipe out all of the residents. The Alliance wanted to achieve this through biological warfare, but the Oz forces beat them to the punch and wanted to go for a more personal approach. They were going to destroy the entire colony with their mobile suits, because after all, what could possibly stop them? It was this hubris that would be their undoing. Their attack alerted the 2 people in the colony who were able to fly mobile suits. The first to sortie was Long Mei Lan, the wife of Wu Fei. As the strongest of her clan, she called herself Nataku, a Chinese god of protection, and therefore she believed that it was her duty to protect the colony. She took the Tallgeese and threw herself into battle. Fearing for the safety of his wife then, Wu Fei would be the second to sortie. With the Tallgeese taken, he would sortie in the Gundam that he had recently given the name Shenlong, or Divine Dragon. A name that he seemingly specifically chose because he thought Mei Lan was too weak. How nice. But the Shenlong Gundam that Wu Fei sortied in wasn't the Shenlong that we're familiar with. At first glance, it might look familiar, but none of the weapons were completed yet. There were no head-mounted Vulcan guns, the right arm was just a standard arm with no Dragon Fang, the left arm had a mounting point for a shield, but the shield was nowhere to be seen, and it was a similar story with the Beam Glaive. The mounting rack on the backpack was present, but the weapon itself wasn't. So when Wu Fei went into battle, he did so without any weapons. Fortunately, he could borrow some weapons from Mei Lan's Tallgeese, allowing him to take on the enemy Leos. But while he was able to save the colony, he wasn't able to save Mei Lan. The wounds she sustained were too grave, and soon after the battle, she would pass away in Wu Fei's arms. It was this moment when Wu Fei decided to give the Shenlong Gundam the nickname Nataku, in honor of both his wife and the justice she tried to achieve. A justice that would be put to the test 1 year later when Operation Meteor began in earnest, and by this time, Shenlong, or rather Nataku, had been completed. For built-in weapons, it got 2 head-mounted Vulcan guns, the Shenlong shield on its left arm, and the Dragon Fang right arm. The Vulcan guns mainly served for intimidation purposes or suppressive fire, and while they did have a high rate of fire, This also meant that they could run out of ammo in less than a minute. The Shenlong shield then was a relatively small shield that was also made as light as possible to make it easy to use in close combat, and in an emergency, it could also be thrown at enemies. And finally, the Dragon Fang replaced the entire right arm. The lower arm was modified to carry the actual Dragon Fang itself, and it came equipped with claws capable of crushing enemies and 2 flamethrowers capable of melting their armor. And to extend the range of this weapon, the upper arm and the shoulder armor were modified with an extending mechanism, making the arm about 3 to 4 times longer. And unlike the shield of the Sandrock, the eyes of the Dragon Fang were purely ornamental, and they were just there to make it look like a dragon head. For handheld weapons then, the Shenlong could use whatever weapons it picked up on the battlefield, like the Tallgeese's weapons or the Taurus's beam cannon, but its own weapon was a Naginata-shaped beam glaive. Like the shield, this was a lightweight and easy-to-handle weapon, and the Shenlong was able to hit enemy weak points with pinpoint accuracy with this weapon. A feat that was no doubt helped by the fighting sight sensors installed on the shoulders. These could detect enemies during battle, and could also instantly deduce their exact position, as well as any possible weak points, allowing the Shenlong to quickly engage and then move in for the kill. And killing was definitely what this thing was designed for. Whereas the other scientists were opposed to the original Operation Meteor, or at the very least apprehensive of it, Masaru was the only one completely in favor of dropping a colony onto the Earth, killing millions upon millions of innocent civilians, and then using the ensuing chaos as an opportunity for the Gundams, and therefore the colonies, to take over the planet. But those plans were shelved, and Masaru and Wu Fei went along with the modified version that was set in motion on that fateful day in After Colony 195. At first, the 5 Gundams were able to use the element of surprise to bring the fight to Oz and the Alliance. But as the battle dragged on, the tide began to slowly shift into Oz's favor, forcing the Gundam pilots to withdraw to space. Wu Fei managed to make it there with his Shenlong, but in the ensuing battles, his Gundam wouldn't just get damaged, it also ran out of supplies. No more bullets, no more energy, and almost no more fuel. So with what little fuel he had left, Wu Fei decided to take a gamble. Oz wasn't just after the Gundams, they were also after their engineers. They wanted to capture all 5 of them and force them to build mobile suits that were stronger than the Gundams. And they were able to do this. Wu Fei then caught wind of this and figured that his best option was to make his way to the facility that they were being held at, surrender, and then hope for the best. And the best is definitely what happened. While the engineers were working on the machines for Oz, they were also secretly upgrading Wu Fei's Shenlong and Duo's Dead Scythe, the other Gundam that was kept at the facility. Here, the Shenlong would be turned into the Altron Gundam, a Gundam that was more fine-tuned for space combat, and that also addressed some of the shortcomings of the original version. And nowhere was this more obvious than the brand new backpack. Shaped like a dragon, it had wings with powerful thrusters, and an articulated twin beam cannon that was built with technology taken from the V8's beam cannon, one of the machines that the scientists were developing for Oz. This backpack not only made it well suited for space, but it also significantly increased its long-range capabilities. And the same thing happened for its mid to short-range capabilities. Its main weapon was now a beam trident with a beam emitter on each side. And in addition to having double the beam blades, they used beam emitter technology taken from the Mercurius, the other machine that the scientists were developing for Oz. And when non-use, it could be made more compact and stored on the left wing of the new backpack. And what was also doubled were the Dragon Fangs. They were now present on both arms. The extending mechanism remained largely the same, but the fangs themselves were overhauled and upgraded. On the Shenlong, the quote-unquote mouth claw was located on the other side of the arm, but it was now incorporated into the claw itself, meaning that the entire thing just looked that much more like a dragon head. As for the flamethrowers, they were stronger and could be used in space. The weapons that remained the same then were the head-mounted Vulcan guns and the shield, although it was now renamed to the Altron shield and had to be moved to the left shoulder because the left arm now had a dragon fang. And talking about the shoulders, the fighting sight sensors are still there, but they did get a bit of an overhaul. They look different and were optimized for use in space. Other upgrades then were added sub-thrusters for better maneuverability, more stylized armor, and a different paint job. Unfortunately for Wu Fei though, and also for Duo, circumstances forced them to launch in their Gundams when they were still only about 70% complete. But in the following days and weeks, they would individually put the finishing touches on their respective Gundams, turning the completed Altron into one of the most versatile and deadly Gundams out there, perhaps second only to the legendary Wing Gundam Zero. And then the Endless Waltz OVA happened, which was a straight up downgrade, despite being supposed to be the same machine. But before we talk more about the Endless Waltz versions, let's have a look at some of the planned upgrades for the TV version of the Shenlong Gundam. These were all published in the comic Bomb magazine, and they sure are something, so let's just jump straight in with one of the maddest upgrades. The Catastrophe D was meant to be a space version of the Shenlong, with some pretty radical changes made to its backpack and legs. On the backpack, it got 4 wings with powerful thrusters that allowed it to soar through space at super high speeds, and then to fuel these thrusters, it also got a set of extra propellant tanks. So far, so normal. But now we get to its abdomen. The main goal of the Catastrophe D was to completely obliterate asteroids and colonies, meaning that it had missile pods containing nukes. And as if that wasn't enough, its legs were replaced with giant claws. These could be used to rip enemy mobile suits apart, and they also had tanks for poison gas.
Hans, are we the baddies?
But now, down to earth we go with the shooting Star Shenlong. This variant was designed for aerial combat, and the biggest change was a large backpack with powerful thrusters, although not quite as large as the backpack found on the Catastrophe D. These thrusters, combined with some armor overhauls, gave it the ability to engage airborne enemies in close combat. And for the weapons it could use in close combat, its main weapon was still the Dragon Fang, and at first sight, it remained largely unchanged. But I did notice something about the shoulder armor. It is the standard shoulder armor that was used for Shenlong's non-extending arms. So it is a possibility that this version of the Dragon Fang no longer has that extension mechanism. And this would make sense. It lowers the weight of the machine, and it's already flying in the sky at high speeds. So the advantage offered by an extension mechanism really wasn't that big anymore. What could be shot out was its large shield, bearing an emblem resembling that of the Titans, which really should have been used on the Catastrophe D. But anyways, this nose cone-shaped shield wasn't meant as part of a transformation mechanism, but it was meant for blocking enemy attacks and for shooting it at enemies thanks to its built-in thrusters. Next up then, we have the Aqua Shenlong, an underwater variant with some very big differences. Thanks to the hydrojet engines on its shoulders and the jet engines on its legs, it maintained its signature mobility even underwater. And its main weapon, the Dragon Fang, was also outfitted with hydrojets, giving it enough punch to sink a battleship in a single hit. And another difference with the standard Dragon Fang was that it seems that this Dragon Fang straight up replaced the right hand. So because of this, the left arm was given the ability to split in two and then carry out various tasks. Another big overhaul then was the twin-headed Lizard Gundam, a jungle warfare mobile suit that seems to have inspired the Altron a bit, because rather than just having one Dragon Fang, this version came with two of them. Their overall power has been upgraded, but the flamethrowers were removed to prevent forest fires, which is then kinda contradicted by its other main weapons, the two upgraded beam glaives. I'm pretty sure that using these in the jungle is also going to set things on fire. But anyways, to blend in, it's painted in a green camo pattern, and it's also equipped with an extra sensor inspired by the Dragon Gundam from G Gundam. This sensor allows the machine to detect enemies approaching from behind. And finally, we have the Blizzard Gundam. As the name indicates, this thing was modified for snowy environments. Compared to the rest, it wasn't changed that much, but the changes that it did get made a huge difference. To keep up its mobility in these harsh environments, small sub-generators were installed in various parts of the body, and the beam glaive was changed to a multi-purpose beam javelin. Other than serving as a combat weapon, the beam generators could be extended outwards, creating a large beam field that could be used for clearing a path through snow and ice. And it was also designed to be used as a ski pole. As for the skis themselves, they were formed with the armor of the lower legs. They were redesigned so that they could fold out to make those makeshift skis, which then gave the Shenlong, or well, the Blizzard Gundam, an energy-efficient way to quickly cover a lot of terrain in snowy areas like Antarctica. Unfortunately though, it wouldn't be the Blizzard Gundam fighting in Antarctica, but the Heavy Arms and the Wing Gundam. Another unfortunate thing was that they encountered problems with the energy supply for the Dragon Fang's flamethrower, and therefore it was never further developed. What I do find interesting about this statement though is that this is the only thing specifically stated to have not been further developed, seemingly suggesting that everything else, including the Catastrophe D, were further developed. How nice. But that was it for the Shenlong and Altron's TV versions, so now we're moving on to the Endless Waltz versions that appeared in model kits, the Glory of the Losers manga, DTL's Impulse manga, and of course, the titular Endless Waltz OVAs/movies. So, at first glance, the Endless Waltz version of the Shenlong Gundam doesn't look too different from the TV version. The armor does look a bit more lean, but the Shenlong was already a pretty lean machine from the get-go. So the main differences were actually the weapons. Instead of a beam glaive, it had a beam trident, and the Dragon Fang was quite different. It was now much bigger, and the arm didn't have an extension mechanism, making it feel like somewhat of an in-between version of the TV version's early version and finished version. What remained the same then were the Dragon Fang's weapons, being its fangs and flamethrowers, the Vulcan guns, and the Shenlong shield. What it lost completely though were the fighting sight sensors on the shoulders. In the Glory of the Losers manga then, it got a brand new weapon that would somewhat make up for the loss of the extending arm. The Liaoya, which was a sword inspired by the Chinese Liu Ye Dao. Not only could the sword be used for close combat, but it could also be thrown and then retrieved by a wire that connected the hilt to the shield. When it was then upgraded to the Altron Gundam Endless Waltz version, it got a lot less changes when compared to the TV version, with the most notable changes being the color scheme, which was now a lot less flashy green, and the Dragon Fangs. It had two of them, and they finally got their extension mechanism. But it was very different from the TV version. Rather than having the arms extend, it was now the Dragon Fangs that had the extension mechanism, something that came with two main benefits. One, they could be extended much longer without sacrificing the structural integrity of the arms, and two, the Dragon Fangs with that extension mechanism were now separate from the arms themselves. So if a Dragon Fang was damaged or straight up destroyed, it didn't impact the arm, and in case of damage, the damaged Dragon Fang could simply be jettisoned. A downgrade for the Dragon Fangs then is that they no longer had the flamethrowers, although I guess there is a good argument to be made that this was actually an upgrade, because in the Endless Waltz version, the Dragon Fangs also functioned as shields, and, you know, using a flamethrower as a shield does not sound like a good time. The final two changes then were that it could now be outfitted with a parachute pack for after it went through atmospheric re-entry, and that the single beam trident was now changed to a double beam trident. But again, in the Glory of the Losers manga, it would get some extra equipment. The Futier equipment. Simply put, it gave the Endless Waltz version the backpack of the TV version. This drastically increased its mobility and also upgunned it with a double beam cannon. And another smaller difference between the Glory of the Losers version and the OVA version is that the arms became a bit more ornate. For our final Altron variant then, we go to the TL's Impulse manga. Seeing the overwhelming power of the 5 Gundams, the pro-war faction of the Romefeller Foundation wanted this power for themselves and began work on their own mass production versions of the Gundams. Under this program, the Altron was developed into the Tien-Lung Gundam, which was a prototype machine capable of fighting in areas with extremely high solar radiation. And to achieve this, its armor was made entirely out of heat-reflecting materials. Another big change was made to its weapons. Despite being based on the Endless Waltz version of the Altron, the shoulders of the Tien-Lung were replaced with the extending shoulders and arms of the Shenlong TV version. And because the extending mechanism of the Altron Endless Waltz version was also still present, it meant that the arms now had a double extension mechanism for even more reach. And while it no longer had the double beam trident, it now had something even more powerful. A version of the Zero system that allowed it to control mobile dolls like the Capricorn, an experimental mobile doll belonging to the Mighty Maya army. Which then brings us to the fate of the Tien-Lung Gundam. To make a long story short, the machine was stolen by a spy for the Mighty Maya army called Krung Ponlamai. But by double-crossing her friends, she would end up getting herself killed. People piloting Altrons sure do have a penchant for betraying their allies.
I've always wanted to have a chance to fight you like this.
Also, there is a small discrepancy between the drawn version and the model kit version of the Tien-Lung Gundam. The drawn version uses the standard Altron Endless Waltz version front skirts, but the model kit has the front skirts of the Wing Gundam. Not the Endless Waltz version, but the standard version. And yeah, this is where the Altron's lineage should have stopped. The Tien-Lung Gundam got destroyed, and the Altron Gundam itself was self-destructed by Wu Fei after Mighty Maya's rebellion.
After Colony 197, peace has returned to the people. And from this point on in history, weapons called mobile suits, including the Gundams, were never seen again.
But despite what the ending of Endless Waltz might claim, mobile suits were still very much around. And while the Altron itself doesn't appear in Frozen Teardrop, we do see some of its equipment making a comeback on the Epyon Bai, with Bai being Chinese for white. This machine was made by Wu Fei himself, based on the blueprints of the original Epyon, and was therefore almost identical. The color scheme was changed to white and blue, and the weapons were completely different. Instead of a sword and shield combo, it got a beam trident and a new dragon fang on the right arm. This dragon fang could extend and was outfitted with a machine cannon and even a large caliber beam cannon, making it significantly deadlier at range than the original. And while in transformed mode, this claw would also act as a third head, making it resemble a 3-headed dragon. And of course, Wu Fei also nicknamed this machine Nataku. And really finally, we have the Altron Cloaked custom. This machine appeared for a second in the Gundam 30th anniversary trailer, and appears to be the Altron Endless Waltz version, but a bit more blue and with a cloak. And that's all that we know about it so far. So I'll make an updated version once we do have all of that information. I haven't completely decided on how to go about this, but since all 5 Gundam Wing Gundams will be getting extra lore, I'm thinking about making a compilation video about all of their development histories, with that new information about them included, as well as some other additions. And that has been all for this video on Gundam Wing's most mobile suit, piloted by everyone's favorite pilot, who has also definitely never betrayed anyone in his entire life. Don't forget to check out NordVPN with the code kkrt or the link down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.